Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little worried because I haven't confirmed the share position in a few minutes. I have to.
You didn't just dump her out.
No. And I checked. None of the fish would fit down the tube. So there's no possibility of that. But. And I don't think there's any possibility of. Yeah, no, she must be having some angle that I can't quite get.
Yeah. You want to see? I'm going to show you.
Behind the pump.
Babe, this is the quail he killed.
Oh, wow. Cher is so smart. Like, even as I'm moving around the candle holder, she's sticking with it.
You just fucked it up for her, babe.
No, well, there.
Look at the quail that Tickle has killed.
Want me to look at quail?
Look at the picture.
The picture? Hold on, let me prop up the candle holder a little better so it's better cavity. Okay. Oh, wow. It's quail, eh?
That's the quail, and then...
It's dead.
Yeah.
It's still alive.
No, it's dead now.
Okay. Wow.
And it's all, like, kind of wet, because he was, like...
Really?
Nomming on it.
Yeah. It's wet with,
Saliva.
saliva. I see. It's really all over it.
Yeah, so we ended up using it, though, as a
Here,
searcher efficiency bird.
as a what efficiency bird?
Searcher efficiency.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Look at him.
Here, wait, what is that?
That's a chicken.
Oh, I see. Okay. Sarah is showing me pictures of when she was in Oregon.
From a while ago. I'm making a I'm presenting in my friend's class tomorrow about what does a biologist do. So I'm going through like old field photos, trying to show 5th graders how cool biology is.
That's awesome. Sure, sure can work. That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun.
Cool. So how are things going?
You mean generally?
Yeah.
I think we're doing great. I got the emergency teaching credential. I don't know if Dad told you. So yeah, I am substitute teaching now.
Oh, that's good. Are you enjoying it?
It's fine. It's work. It's interesting. It also gets boring. So I'm fine with it. I'll keep doing it for a while.
Are you at one school or do you move on?
So I'm signed up to a couple of districts of schools. And basically, there's an online sign up system that it's like a calendar format, and I pick specific days and jobs that I want to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Gives you a chance to check on different schools, figure out which ones you like better than others.
Right. And I just got your text. The phone just ran out of battery a moment ago. So I've already done first graders, fourth graders, seventh and eighth graders, and I've done high school students. Basically, like a month in, I already, there's just not a whole lot more to necessarily see for substitutes in terms of like routine or classroom management. I mean, basically, the only thing I'll really be, exposed to or develop experientially are specific educational modules, basically. And by the way, I think you probably already noticed that Tira and I are attempting doing live streaming like during the day. So the live stream is active right now, just so you're aware. I think there's a great kind of like mixture of stress and also like it's kind of like a continual balance between your cortisol and also like kind of a lot of like empathetic responses that I feel like oxytocin like flowing through my system at the same time, especially with the elementary school kids. You're very active. You're almost always on your feet. You're always interacting with the students. You really are like the guiding an emotional process continuously in the room, collectively for the group and as well as for individual students. Whereas at the high school level, I only did one high school day. It was a range between 9 to 12, and I didn't like it nearly as much. It felt boring. There wasn't a whole lot for me to do. They just kind of had their projects and assignments, and I just told them to continue doing it, and I basically just make sure that students stay in their assigned seats and don't get up and move around the room and stuff like that. That it felt way more like babysitting at high school, whereas elementary school felt the most engaging, and like I need to be here, basically. And without me being here, these students like just absolutely nothing would happen, basically. And so I think I might like Southern Elementary, on that level, even though it's definitely hard to work. It actually is at least really doing something. Yeah. So.
And Kara, how's your job going? Are things settling down, or are you still working really long hours?
I got furloughed this past week.
Oh.
Yeah, which was kind of annoying. And they're saying, like, as soon as work picks back up, we'll bring you back. The issue really just became the PG&E bankruptcy.
Wait, the what?
PG&E's bankruptcy. You know, we were doing most of our work with PG&E. Most of our contracts are with them.
And so, like, 7 employees got furloughed, like, from our team, right?
Yeah, and so there's a ton of work that, like, our contract is signed. There's a ton of work that will have to be done, but it's not, they're not able to do it now. So, I think it's a temporary thing, you know, but, you know, I still am looking for other positions, potentially. You know, if this stretches out into a couple weeks, you know, it could really become a problem. So, for the time being, you know, we're fine, but, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's really the only way to put it. It just kind of sucks. And, you know, there's nothing really to do about it. Besides just let it be.
Right, do what you can to plan.
Yeah, yeah. So, that's where we are on that.
So tell me about the fish tank. What kind of fish do you have?
Dave, you want to tell her?
We have 5 guppies, and 3 of them are like, their front half is yellow and their back half is blue. And I was in charge of naming. And so those were named after the Roman triumvirate. So Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. We have 2 other guppies that are kind of gold and speckled. And those are Adolf and Benito. So going for kind of a dictator theme. We have 3 blue rams, who we named Joe, Frank, and Winston. And then we have a pleco, which got named Cher. So it's like the bottom feeder, like sucky ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we named that one Cher. I don't know.
It's PLC. Well, yeah, PLECKO. Like how it sounds. And and that's like the short nickname. The full name is Plecothenius.
Oh.
So if you remember, the red Oscar tank, the black bottom feeder that was with that was a Plecothenius.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, same species. Yeah. You know, of course, you know, we got one that's really tiny and not, you know, it probably won't grow as big as the one that ours got, because there are a lot of other fish. You know, so we have a total of 9, and right now we're adding more objects to the situation. Putting in a piece of cactus stem that does not want to. It definitely wants to float badly, but I think I have it anchored down. Yeah, I put the river rock soap on top of it. And so 30 gallons, so the same size as the Oscar tank back in the day. And I have this very superstitious crystal that
Oh my gosh.
how should I? This thing's been sitting outside for the past few years. I don't know. Should I? I'm gonna put it in the candlestick. So yeah, what's going on for you, Mom?
Well, I was in Florida for 2 days last week.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's one of the thrills and some of the wildlife that I spotted.
Nice.
I went on an evening kayaking tour thing,
Uh-huh.
and by the Cape Canaveral National Seashore,
Uh-huh.
and there was this island of migratory birds, and I got to see rose-eared bluebill
so cool looking.
They're so cool looking. And there were a whole bunch of them on this island. And I got to see some Brazilian white pelicans that were
Oh
migrating.
wow. That were what?
They were migrating.
Uh-huh.
So they're not normally there, but I guess it's that time of year when a lot of birds are migrating. So, and they were huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
And then there were some of the ones that I've seen before, like cormorants and brown pelicans and, I don't know, a few others. But I got to see dolphins and alligator.
Nice.
And, I just saw another, more a panther or a bobcat. I'm not sure which one.
Oh wow.
Cat-like critter like that.
Was it huge or small?
Well, see, that's what I couldn't really tell. I saw it when I was driving there, and it was at a distance if I crossed the road.
Oh, okay.
And if I had known what to look for, I would have been able to ID it. But I guess later,
Yeah.
Buddies. They're gonna be their fifth graders, but they're going on a field trip to the Sierras on Wednesday for a couple days. So the main point of me being there is to go over like how to do a field journal, so they can make them while they're out there. Yeah, so definitely in the part of the presentation phase, we're like throw everything at it and then do it later. Alright, so yeah. Yeah, well, and I've been talking about doing this with her, like coming into her class for a while, but I've always been having
5 weeks, and then the project would kind of stay half done for maybe 3 or 4 years. Alright, go back in. Zach never got the sweater.
It requires too much counting.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'll finish an Afghan before I would finish something like that, because you got to count with sweaters and such.
Right. Yeah, I always just did scarves because that was easy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Scarves you don't have to count. Same thing. Yeah. Although I was looking at some of these sites, you might find some of this stuff really interesting. Some of these sites where they talk about free-form crocheting.
Oh.
And they make some just really beautiful artistic things.
Yeah.
Where it's like lace, you know, very colorful lace, and is it called mandalas? Is that what they're called? When you have like a very colorful kind of mosaic.
A mandala is specifically like it's a manner of, you know, iconography to convey certain like cultural concepts and ideas and images. So.
And does it usually take like a circular form or geometric form?
Like Tibetan Buddhist mandalas are often like circular around the wider edge and then become squares and rectangles internally. And yeah, there are different geometric patterns. You know, like the mandalas are broken up by like you can call them rooms. You know, and each room has kind of like a different purpose, and there's different imagery to like remind you of what you're supposed to contemplate in that room of the mandala.
Okay.
And you're going from the outside to the inside to the center.
Okay.
I don't know, does that reflect what you're talking about, or?
Yeah, it does sound like what I'm talking about. I mean, I think that these designs weren't necessarily... They looked, well, I don't know, maybe there was a story behind each of them. They had patterns for them, but it's not like in the description they were trying to give you the meaning of the pattern. They just kind of would show the different patterns. But yeah, it sounds like what you're talking about.
Okay.
And I think that's how they refer to them. So there's just some really unique and interesting things that they're, you know, doing with crafts these days. It's, you know, well beyond the granny square Afghans.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, you know, we're pretty boring.
Well, boring is good.
And you know, I think that oh shoot, I'm spilling water. I am getting involved with this group that does empathic listening.
Okay.
And the format, they're called empathy circles.
Okay.
And I think you would actually find them pretty interesting because they're pretty, they have share a lot of commonality with talkback.
Yeah.
And so reflective listening entails talking back what you just heard the person say to you.
Right.
Right? And so do you want to try it real quick?
Sure.
You want to try? All right, so try talking back what I just said to you.
That you have been getting involved with a new group focused on empathic listening skills that has traits in common with talkback. It's basically trying to say back to the person what you heard them say to you.
And this group is focusing specifically on the political divide
and they're commonly known as the empathy tent. And the empathy tent made a one of its marks at like the far right rallies that have been going on in Berkeley.
Cool.
Try talking that back. bear with
what?
me. Bear with me. Just try talking that back. I know that was quite a bit.
No, that's cool. So, this is different than like deep canvassing. It's not trying to change people's views. It's just trying to listen and bridge divides. Or
Okay, so there's a few things, and just to make one point first. Like, so say like if you like repeated back what I just said to you, then my response would have been, okay, I feel fully heard. Right.
Okay.
And that's an important component, right? And so everybody gets to talk. So say if you have a circle of 5 people, right? There's one speaker and one listener. Not everybody's trying to reflect back, but just one listener is reflecting back, and there are a few things to consider. One is that as you know, most people, when they are even like practicing active listening, there's all kinds of filtering that's going on, and if they attempt reflecting back, the message does change, and often it could change in really meaningful ways, and so you would see with the number of empathy circles that when you're reflecting back, you may have to try again a few times, and then eventually the speaker feels fully heard, and they're like, okay, I think I got you got it this time. I feel like you actually heard me this time. So there's the main underlying theory is that you literally are training people on empathetically connecting with other people's mental and basically even physical experiences, right? Just their experience. And so theoretically, by facilitating like radical empathy in that way, it does actually shift people in terms of their political ideology, and when it comes to like extreme right-wing groups, oftentimes, or actually not even necessarily just extreme right-wing groups, but just extremist political groups in general, that extremists feel like they're really marginalized by society, right? They're they have like they can have like a victim complex towards like an entire group of people. Like, I feel persecuted by liberals, right? And it's difficult for them to like actually like pinpoint out like, okay, what exactly is like the injustice that's going on like in this situation in your relationship with liberals. Like in many cases it actually it becomes and remains vague, oftentimes. Or, like, one situation can be conflated to represent an entire group of people. Anyway, you understand all this.
I do.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. So when you say it changes their ideology, what do you mean by that? What kind of changes do you see?
So one example, based on Empathy Circle, there was a left-leaning person listening to a right-leaning one, and the right-leaning person was talking about how when a right-winger does something. Oh shoot! I'm actually not necessarily in sort of the situation total justice. When it was like basically like talking about doxing or losing your job, as a result of saying something that's controversial or not politically correct. and the manner in which he said it and framed it struck as powerful for someone who identified as left-leaning in the group. And said, well, actually, like, I feel like, and I can take responsibility for, like, contributing to this particular thing that you're naming. And so she basically self-professed that that her attitudes on politics have shifted. And so ideology, or politics remain kind of vague terms, even as I tried describing that for you. But I based on my experience, like with the Richmond Progressive Alliance, like they don't practice like empathic or reflective listening skills, right? Instead it's you kind of have like a core group of like the core organizers, and they're really just trying to like whip everybody else into like their leadership and their agenda.
Yeah.
Whereas it's like harder to do that kind of stuff like in an aggressive way, or an unfair way, when it's expected for you to actually, do reflective listening. And reflective listening, like I think for most people, like it can kind of seem like a little awkward at first, right? Where like, oh, why would I like reflect back something that like seems obvious that you said, basically.
Right.
But once it's learned as a skill, it kind of like breathes in and out of conversations.
Right.
There, you can, if things like start becoming tense or confusing, you slow it down with reflection. And if like you're arguing about something and you feel like, someone else, like if someone like says like, I feel like you're selfish because you did this, right? Then you just reflect back. It's like, okay, right now I hear you saying that you think I'm selfish because I did this, right?
Right.
And not only does that make the person feel like heard and like, okay, you actually understand what I'm saying right now and you're acknowledging me, right? It doesn't mean that you're agreeing with it. It just means you're fully acknowledging it and confronting it.
Right.
It also offers like the help of like a mirroring too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I can imagine that people would sometimes say, "Oh, wow, hearing that back sounds a lot harsher than I meant."
Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing these listening circles. Are you doing it to learn empathy mapping, or is this part of like what kind of people show up to this? Is it kind of an ongoing dialogue in Berkeley, and learning how to do empathic listening is just part of it, or is this all about learning the skill?
So it's an ongoing project. I'm interested in it as a vehicle for campaign organizing methodology.
Sure, right.
And that's basically it. And so I'm, my interest is to help, in the core, the core organizer of the project. He's particularly interested in having elected officials do empathy circles.
Right.
And there has been interest. He has gotten a couple of like yeses. He already did like a forum between Assembly District 15 candidates last year, or whichever, 2017, and so he just wants to advance that. And while he has a lot of skill and knowledge, like on empathy, on mental health issues, on like conflict resolution processes, he's not particularly experienced in campaigns or organizing or building organizations of volunteers, like grassroots organizations.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in helping him do that. And he and his group have basically just finished really mapping out like an open source, like copyright free program around around this process and like the facilitator trainings and all that stuff. And so like you could go to cultureofempathy.com to see that. So I'll see what happens, and I'm just going to explore things with them and
That sounds interesting.
and see where
It's
it goes.
kind of
Yeah.
like when, in doing focus groups, for years and years and years in doing focus groups, I would be relaying to clients and others, understand that we bring together a mix of ideologies into one room. And 99 times out of 100, people walk out saying, wow, I didn't realize that we had so many things in common. Who knew that we could bring together a room of 10 very different people and yet all come away feeling like there was a lot of common ground,
Right.
because that's basically what you do in the course of a focus group. I mean, when it's done well, when it's exploratory and people are really talking, you are saying back to people things like, okay, so I think I hear Joe saying this. Is that what you're saying, Joe? Okay, Bill, can you respond to what Joe just said? You know what I mean? So you're kind of like, and you see the kind of extremes come together or agree to disagree, but at least they've heard each other.
Absolutely. And so another dimension to consider is that reflective listening is basically like the core methodology of Western psychotherapy, right? If you go sit down with a therapist, the vast majority of the time, they're helping you reflect back what you're saying and processing it with you in a constructive way, right? The problem is with that, this is a systemic problem, is that the therapist isn't then sharing with you what's going on for them, right? And that stunts people's abilities to become reflective listeners, right? So if you as the patient are being reflected at, you get to speak, you get to be reflected at. When someone else is then speaking to you, you lack the skill of being able to reflect empathically back to them. And so it's necessary to create a two-way situation in order to really get deeper. Yeah.
That's interesting. How often do you do these listening circles?
So I've done a couple, and I'm going to start facilitator training on Saturday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
What was another thing? Oh yeah, and so like something to consider with live streaming, because I see that as like as a component of articulating a culture of empathy. In that we still live in a prevailing culture where everyone is trying to like protect and guard face, right? And maybe like radical transparency is a way of of breaking through that highly guarded culture and inviting people to just be relaxed with their base humanity, right? And I think there's already plenty of like notions within our culture of like oh yeah, well everybody struggles with something, or oh well you don't know what the other person's life is, so how can you judge, right? We have these different kind of like axioms that people use to like tell themselves like, okay, well within each other's private lives, don't worry about it or don't judge or what have you. but I think when that actually like meets reality, we still do like live in a very judgmental society, and we live in a society that is still very much concerned with or even obsessed with saving face or maintaining face. So I just want to invite you to consider that maybe radical honesty, radical vulnerability, and really just like letting go, on that dimension, can unwind a lot of like the neuroses and like attachments that people feel to being right and being seen as right or great or what have you. And that fosters empathy.
Yeah, it's. I hear what you're saying. Um, it's risky. It's scary. It's vulnerable is exactly the right word. Particularly if you're out there doing it and very few others are. You're kind of putting yourself in a very vulnerable place that others aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes some courage.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So it takes courage and also like it's very difficult to live stream. I mean, there are thousands of people who have already done what I've done, what I'm doing right now, right? There are a lot of people right now as we speak. They live stream many hours out of the day, or even 24/7. And I've seen some of those streams, and I feel like there is like kind of like a number of those people are like really involved in like and this isn't like a universal thing, but like of the streams that I've like watched so far, like a lot of them like have a lot of like internet trolls like interacting with them and giving them money, and there's like stunt culture going on.
What culture?
Like stunts, so like there's this guy here in California. His name's Asian Andy. He goes by Asian Andy, and he doesn't live stream 24/7 anymore. He used to, but he would like go into a grocery store, and like someone would pay him money to like have either he would say it or like a recording would like blurt it out automatically, like something really embarrassing, right? And he has to live with the embarrassment of what just happened, and people around him roll their eyes or get mad or whatever happens, right? It's kind of like live action trolling. And of course, that's very different from the agenda that I have. And I think there have been a number of live streamers, especially like in the past, though they're not doing it anymore, who were doing it to be comfortable, with themselves and be comfortable with their lives and just kind of see how it goes and stuff like that. And I'm much more on spectrum with that. But I think most of the risk comes in with being comfortable with yourself, right, and being comfortable with the mind and body that you sit in, and if you're not, then having a transparent lifestyle exposes all that stuff immediately. And personally, I felt a real like calling to go ahead and expose that stuff, and I'm definitely interested to see where things are, like a week or 2 or 3 from now. But like, so what is it? This is like the 3rd day, babe. Do you know this? Yeah, she's like, I don't know.
And do you do it all the time, or just like a few hours a day, or what? So
right now, we're doing it basically whenever we're home, but we're not sleep streaming yet. To a certain degree, it doesn't really even feel necessary. I don't really care. I don't feel a personal care about whether I'm doing the sleep stream or not. If anything, it's just there is like labor that's involved with actually running this thing, right? You know, and I would much prefer if I had like a camera that was in my glasses or something, and I didn't have to worry about it, and it just did it, right? That would be much more congruent with what I would personally like. And there's the technological limitations of taking the tablet outside of the house, right? I would have to, buy a data hotspot, and I might have to get a new like little camera system and stuff like that. And I'll just look at that in a few weeks or something like that if that's something I want to move forward with. And I may also just like before, months ago, I didn't feel any real like calling or need to write stream of consciousness or do any of that, throw, the baggage out of my mind. And I felt like, frankly, doing nothing instead. And so that's exactly what I did. And now I feel like, trying it again. And of course, doing it again now feels entirely different than before. So. Yeah, you keep doing it. And if anything, it feels like it's just not a big deal. And personally, I think that's part of what's kind of amazing about this is how ordinary and not a big deal it is. I absolutely can see how you or others may see this as a really big deal in some way, shape, or form, and I'm, absolutely open to hear what you think or feel, or answer any questions you have. The question still remains for me, that, this. Live streaming could actually be like a viable mental health care treatment, basically. Be a viable mental health care treatment. It could be a viable, just advantageous in a number of different ways. Yeah. So, wow, you still there? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, intellectually, I hear what you're saying, and I understand, why you find it a valuable activity.
Would you mind starting it up again? We'll see. Sorry, we're just dealing with the water in the fish tank right now.
Wait, you're doing what?
One second, I'm sorry. And just make sure it balance a bit of the cold water going into it too, so it's not hot yet. Now go ahead.
No, I was just saying I understand intellectually, what this is about and why you see it as a valid activity. Personally, it's not anything I personally would be comfortable with, but I hear and understand what you're talking about. I mean, to me personally, I think it would feel, for me, trying to do it would feel like a combination of two things, either, narcissism or, the flip side of that. It's two extremes. If I'm attentive to it and thinking about it, and it's there, then I feel narcissistic that I'm putting my life on display. If I ignore it and it's not, and I'm just living my life while it's going, then that's, kind of extreme vulnerability. So while I understand intellectually what you're trying to do, for me personally, it would be a very uncomfortable experience.
Sure. So just reflecting back on what you're saying, I hear you saying that, while you feel like you understand, intellectually how I see this as a valid activity, you feel like personally it's not a choice that you would make, and that if you were to, I think you were speaking personally for yourself, that if you were to do this, you feel like you might be stuck between two extremes. One extreme where you're self-policing, constantly, and you use the word narcissistic, kind of existence, and potentially the other extreme where, you don't have any care or focus at all, and that's like, I think you used the word vulnerability. That's like too much vulnerability and could really expose you to things.
Right.
And so I mean, there are a few things I can say to that, but I mean, one thing I can say is that I really don't really. I think those apparent extremes are there and are actually like kind of mixing all the time, and I'm curious to see where it goes, because the reality is the reality is, for the vast majority of people in our world, we are stuck in our heads all the time, or for most hours out of the day. If you're not, unless you're like glued to a particular activity, right? If you're like glued to watching a really thrilling movie, right? Or glued to a video game, most likely you're cycling actually a lot of really repetitive, discursive thoughts that are like egocentric. Are like, I want this, I don't want that, I'm worried about this, I love that, pushing and pulling, or remembering things that happened in the past, and if anything, it's personally, I don't have the goal of trying to squeeze out, my own conscience, right? I want to be self-aware, and I want to have a conscience about who I am and what I'm doing in the world and how I'm relating to others, and how, what I'm doing may impact them or impact situations. But the thing is that being focused on and being really self-aware of your thoughts and your actions is actually like that actually itself is not necessarily what narcissism is as a concept. Narcissism has to do with actually literally not experiencing empathy towards others. That other people are objects in the world, rather than people. Components of narcissism have to, do with having like a real self and a false self that's projected out into the world. So you have like a continual doublethink that's going on. And those are just components. It's not like all people on that spectrum have those behaviors. but the very, like, if I identify as a meditator, like a core goal of meditation is to be self-aware and in conscious control of mind and body and speech as you navigate through the world. Now, do I agree with like even the prevailing culture that's necessarily going on around meditation? Not necessarily. I feel very skeptical towards that stuff. But I listen to it and I want to be aware of it. And I feel like this experience is kind of, almost like pushing those extremes to some kind of middle, if that's even there, right? Where you are present with the things that are going on in your mind and the things that you do, but you're not obsessed with them, and you're not, having high emotional or emotional attachments are fine, but you understand what I'm saying. That it's the conversations I've had with people who are longtime meditators, there's no such thing as enlightenment. If anything, the mind really just becomes a place where thoughts and memories pass through, and you see them, you hear them, they're happening, and you can acknowledge them, but you're not sunk into them in traumatic ways that that can keep you reeling or what have you. Yeah.
Do you see live streaming becoming part of the empathic listening stuff you do, or is there you're involving other people in the live stream?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, all the empathy circles are already recorded. Not live, but they are. Okay. But they're already recorded. In like those situations, I would be happy to like turn off the live stream and the regular recording goes on, and it's going to get posted later, and that's not a big deal. And at this point, I'm not necessarily like opposed to, like, if you asked me like, hey, would you mind turning off the live stream? I want to talk with you about something. I'm not opposed to that. But there may come to be a point where, I have like a, frank conversation with you and others where I'm like, this is, I've been doing this for, some months now. And as far as I'm concerned, like as an organizer or, as someone who wants to, try to lead, a cultural conversation, just as a matter of principle, I'm transitioning over where I'd rather live stream my conversations with you, and I hope you respect that. I hope I think there will kind of be a point where a threshold of some kind where I hold stronger boundaries about it. But right now, I don't feel that way, and that may never come. I may stay flexible about it long term. This isn't like the definition of an obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, is if not only like I have to stay according to specific rules, and if I deviate from those rules, it makes me feel distressed in an unwanted way, right? So the distress has to be there, and it also has to be unwanted. I don't feel distressed when the live stream's off. If anything, I've actually over the past few months, it's been like kind of like, oh man, like this is something that I feel like
I want to do and I should do and I wish I were doing it, and but I'm not, because I know it's actually because I feel inside of myself like the fear of changing as a person, right? I know I'm sure you've had plenty of those feelings, over the course of life, and everybody else, can recognize that feeling when, you feel like the apprehension to taking a step into doing something because you're going to have to change as you do it. And so, I'm just, that's what's up, and so I'm not gonna, like, just push myself. I don't really feel like I'm pushing myself. It's just where I'm at.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, other than substitute teaching and empathy training, are you doing any other jobs at the moment, or is substitute teaching keeping you pretty busy? Or
Subbing will keep me busy 5 days a week if I wanted to, and right now my goal is to sub 3 days a week.
okay,
So,
that's
you
good.
know, and they're full work days. Doing 7:30 to 3:30. Even though school starts after that and it ends before it. You report for those times, and
Right.
But usually in practice, when school lets out, you can leave. And unless you have a specific duty that you're assigned to. Like at the elementary level, I might have to go and supervise the loading of a bus in particular.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think in all, like including breaks, and there is real work before school starts because I have to, really focus on the lesson plan and understanding what's going on and absorbing that, and a lot of my breaks are usually taken up by that too. And so I think I probably do get like an actual, probably 30 paid minutes in the middle of the day where I feel like I can just sit and do nothing and just eat. But outside of that, like the break times, high school is probably the biggest exception to that. Maybe if I wanted to do as little work as possible, I would just take as many high school assignments as possible and bring my laptop, and if the students are doing self-directed work, I can just sit there and do my own work. But
You're right. The responsibility with the young ones is huge. And in fact, I didn't even think about it till just now when you talked about supervising buses. I mean, safety is so important, beyond what goes on in the classroom. There was a kid who got hit by a bus at Folger a number of years back, and where they ended up then changing the whole way that they went about loading the buses. It was just like this, freak accident. But there was a story on the news today in Virginia, I guess a year ago, a kid in an elementary school was injured and died because of one of those, they have those electronic moving walls that separate classrooms, and he was helping the teacher move the wall, and I don't know exactly what happened, but something went wrong, and he got injured and died, and, it seems like such a ridiculous thing. It's like, how would one of those things so injure a kid? You can see where they might get their fingers pinched or something, but, even the littlest things, you just have to always be vigilant. They're little kids.
yeah, well, I can
dangers
tell you
were.
right now, the most vigilant teachers, the most vigilant staff will probably never be able to eliminate those kinds of freak accidents from occurring.
Right. Oh, it's totally a freak thing. But you know what? And I wonder, I don't really know the details of how it happened, but they must not think that it was completely a freak accident, because now they've introduced legislation with some rules around those kinds of things, like, which I can only assume, A, kids can't operate it, but B, limiting the hours, like you can only move the classroom walls when kids aren't in the classroom or something. I think they are,
Sure.
taking steps like that. But yeah, no, there was also, they have those movable bleachers in gyms, and several kids have gotten injured with those. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, particularly with I didn't even think about bus duty and all that. Yeah, it's, boy, that would be a nightmare scenario, have something go wrong.
Yeah. And but yeah. So I mean, part of the reality is that because the children are even when they're supposed to be seated, they're moving around. And so when you are if you're in the class and you're doing an activity and you stop at the desk of a couple of students to help them with the activity, your awareness is then only on that, at best, at that corner of the classroom, right? It's things can go on behind your back very easily. And with the regular teachers, it's not nearly as much of a problem because the students, like, they give total respect, deference, like they will not, deference not the right word, but if they start being disruptive on the other side of the room behind the teacher's back, that's going to become a huge problem for them.
Right.
And
whereas they all want to see what they can get away with this stuff.
Yeah, and they can get away with a lot with me. Well, so I can only send so many kids to the office, right?
Right.
And almost every day so far, kids have been going to the office at the elementary and middle level. After with multiple warnings, I give a couple of warnings and then I'll start sending kids to the teacher next door. And then the next step after that is the office. I'll have, oh, well, there it goes. So my